He said, listen, it's just 3 of you. It's down to you 3. He said, okay. He said, so somebody's going to take it home. So he said, so you got to fly back to New York. I'm like, okay, all right. So I come back to town and I go see the agent. He's got the paperwork laid out. Then he told me how much money it was. He said the show is guaranteed to be picked up for at least 2 seasons. He said, so no matter what, he said, no matter how bad the show is or how bad the ratings are, it's guaranteed 2 years, 26 episodes per year. You're guaranteed $250,000 per week or per episode. The math on that is $13 million. He drops that on me before I go in for the audition.
It's gonna make you laugh real loud. So come on, scream it out.
All right, so I saw this story the other day in the news that Caroline's Comedy Club in New York City on Broadway is closing down. And I was like, oh man, Caroline's literally one of the best comedy rooms in the country. In my opinion, comics who had the opportunity to play that room, it is a pristinely laid out comedy club, and it's, you know, it's one of the best stages and most historic stages, I believe, in the country. Anyway, my point is that it reminded me of this situation that happened that really illustrates how much the game has changed in the industry and how much the money has changed in the industry. So it's 1995, I believe, maybe 96, but definitely more than likely 1995. And Ed Lover and Dr. Dre from Yo MTV Raps, Who's the Man, and other movies and TV shows, they had a comedy night on Wednesday night, and it was a hot room. I mean, they hosted it, and I'm talking about some of the who's who of New York comedians and the road comics and celebrity comedians and whatever. They would come through, and it would be like hip hop artists and R&B artists in the audience. I remember the first night I went up, Salt and Pepper was in the audience, Busta Rhymes, and then ODB came in like at the end of the show and then did something crazy and like left out. So it just had this unique environment that, quite frankly, I wasn't used to coming from Savannah, Georgia. You just want to get on stage. But then to get on stage and they have these major celebrities in the room, it just was on something else. Anyway, that's not the point. The point of it is it was just an amazing comedy room and an amazing night. So I had a great set, and I came off, and you know, I'm hanging out talking to the comedians. By that time, I think I had been to New York maybe twice, maybe 3 times. And so I had a rapport with a lot of the comics. New York has some really solid comedians, many of which have gone on to do some amazing things. Others who have just been consistent as just great comics over the years. So I'm just, you know, hanging out talking. And that's one of the good things about New York is, unlike some other cities, for me at least, it wasn't that hate. The hate that you experience in some other cities when you have a good set. In New York, having a good set is going to get you more stages. Not hate and I'm not saying nobody hates in New York. I'm not saying that, but that wasn't my experience, at least, right? So anyway, after the show, I'm hanging out talking to several comedians, and then the talent booker for comedy for Caroline's walks up, guy named Louis Ferranda. Now, I had no idea who Louis Ferranda was because I got booked for that show because of Tina Graham. Tina Graham was the booking agent, an assistant to Bob Sumner, who booked Def Comedy Jam. So Tina got me on stage. Not Caroline's. I came in through Tina. So Louis Ferrando walks up. He was like, hey, you had a good set tonight. I'm like, okay, thank you. I'm like, again, I don't know who he is. So he introduces himself. I'm like, okay, cool. Great meeting you. He was like, you gonna be in town Friday? I was like, yeah. He was like, good, come back on Friday. You got a showcase. And I'm like, okay, all right. And he was like, you ever heard of David Tockerman? I'm like, nah, not right off. He was like, David Tockerman. You ever heard of Carsey Warner? I'm like, Carsey Warner? I'm like, yeah. He was like, Cosby Show, Roseanne? I'm like, yeah. He was like, he just cast Grace, Brett Butler, Grace Under Fire. I'm like, yeah. So full context, David Tockerman, which I didn't know this at the time, but he was one of the casting people or the head casting director for Carsey Warner. His job is to go out and find comedians. At the time, a lot of the networks were picking up young black comics and giving them what they called a holding deal. A holding deal is a deal where they take a year or two and try to develop a TV show around you. They pay you $250,000, $500,000. Some guys even got $1 million on a holding deal. So legend has it that D.L. Hughley walked into ABC and on a pitch, no script, no big presentation, he just pitched his show, his family, the Hughleys, and got $1 million holding deal. That's what legend says. I don't know. It may not be true. But back in them days, they was giving out a lot of guys were picking up holding deals. And a lot of these shows never went anywhere. I've had a development deal before. So a development deal doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get paid or that you're going to, well, back then it meant you got paid. Today you can get a development deal and you get no money up front. Another conversation for another video. Anyway, so I don't know really the magnitude of what's happening. I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, got a showcase. So he walks off. He's like, so be here. He was like, be here on Friday night. Get here, at 7:30. Your showcase time is like 8 o'clock. Get here about 7:15. I'm like, okay, all right. So he walks off. When he walks off, all the comics like, how you get a showcase? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. They're like, this how you get a showcase? He got a showcase. I'm like, okay. And so they were going on and on. Again, I'm from Savannah, Georgia. I came up to really audition for Def Jam. And in preparing to audition for Def Jam, I do Ed Lover and Dr. Dre's night. It's a paid gig. Tina Graham got me booked there. I did great. That's all I'm really thinking about. This whole showcase thing is extra. It's gravy. It's the cherry on top of an already great night. But I wasn't really thinking about the magnitude of what it meant. Again, because I don't know. So again, the comments are going on and on and on. My boy, who I was staying with from Savannah, I'm sorry, from Savannah State University, Augusta, Georgia, living in New York, my homeboy Greg Glover, G Lover. Greg is like, yo, man, that's good, man. You got a showcase. I'm like, okay. Everybody has a little bit of idea of what the showcase was, really, except me. But probably it was good because I didn't have time to overthink it. I'm an overthinker, right? And probably had I not known that, well, anyway, I'll come back to that. So everybody's going on about it. I'm like, okay, I got a showcase. It is what it is. Friday night, come back. Everything goes great. I get there early. So I always say something to be said for getting there early because the showcase time was like 8 o'clock. I was supposed to be there. The call time was 7:30. I probably got there about 7 o'clock, something 7:10, something like that. That extra time gave me the opportunity to get there, get in, and really observe the environment and relax. So I got a chance to talk to other comics, watch the other comedians who went up before me. So it was a good way for me to prepare before I went up. And that was very important because the Friday night audience was much different than the Saturday night audience. Ed Lover's audience was black, young, energetic, hip hop, R&B. Friday's audience is mainstream, white majority, New York mainstream comedy club. I've been playing white rooms for years, so that wasn't a big deal. But it's a different crowd because it's New York, right? So, but everything goes well. I go up. I have a great set. Back then, my set I was still figuring out my point of view. So my set was very much more observational and young comic, my worldview, black and white material, stuff like that. Set went great. David Talkman comes over, right? And Louis Ferranda introduces me to him and another lady who I didn't really know who she was. And so they were very complimentary of my set. And then they said, we'll be in touch. I'm like, okay. I don't know what that means, because particularly in LA and New York, because somebody said we'll be in touch and you never hear from them before. And actors, comedians, musicians, all of that, folks have hundreds, sometimes thousands of stories like that where somebody said we'll be in touch and they never do. But I go back to Savannah, go home, everything went well, and I'm hopeful. And they called back. They called back, and it was actually Louis Ferranda that called back, and he was like, "Hey, listen," he's like, "Carsey Warner really likes you." I'm like, "Okay." He was like, "Yeah." He said, "So listen, here's the deal. This is what I didn't know. Bill Cosby had a new show that they were developing called Cosby. This is 2 or 3 years after the Cosby show had ended. Bill was doing another show at CBS. Him and Felicia Rashad was back together, but it was a whole different show, totally different show. Other than that, only thing else that was the same was they were playing husband and wife. So they were like, he was like, he has this new show, and they have a character for a younger guy that they're casting for. That was the character called Griffin. So I'm like, okay. So he says, like, listen. He said, this is yours to lose. Okay, he lays it out for me. Here's the thing. He probably gave me too much information, and then the agent gave me even more information. That was a little bit overwhelming, right? Okay, so they had this all set up. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, it just was what it was, right? But here's why. And let me say this: a lot of times, again, back to the whole thing I was talking about up top about how much the industry's changed, and people will say, "Man, how you feel about this?" And I know you don't do this type of material, and you don't do these type of shows, and you don't play these type of venues, and you wind up turning down this. I'm like, man, again, the stuff that you turning down today compared to what it used to be. It's a lot easier, in my opinion, to resist the spirit of compromise when you have something to compare it to, right? So they pair me with an agent. I never had an agent before that. Never had a manager before. No, never had a manager before that. I don't think I did at that time. No, I had my first quote unquote Hollywood or New York or LA manager maybe 2 or 3 years later. Another story for another day. But they pair me with this agent. Like you walk in, you already signed. All you gotta do is do the deal, right? The agent tells me, he says, listen, it's yours to lose. It's you and 2 other guys. He said they're gonna pick one of you guys. He says, so you go in there and read for this, and you got it. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, it can't just be like that. He said, listen, it's just 3 of you. It's down to you 3. He said, okay. He said, so somebody's going to take it home. That's a lot of pressure. Okay. So he said, so you got to fly back to New York. I'm like, okay. All right. So I come back to town, and I go see the agent. He's got the paperwork and all that stuff, laid out. Then he told me how much money it was. This is a whole different ball game right now. He said the show is guaranteed to be picked up for at least 2 seasons. He said, so no matter what, he said, no matter how bad the show is or how bad the ratings are, it's guaranteed 2 years. He says 26 episodes per year, 2 years guaranteed pickup. That's 52. He says you're guaranteed $250,000 per week or per episode if you get cast. 250. The math on that is $13 million. That's a lot of information to give to a dude who is about 25, 26 years old. Who only been doing comedy 4 years, I think. Something like that, 3-4 years. So, so I'm like, what? and here's the thing. They were stressing that it's just down to 3 of us. And again, they have been stressing that the entire however many weeks it was in between the time when they called me and when I went back up there. But now he drops that on me before I go in for the audition. The audition was at a casting director, not David Talkerman, but at another casting director's office a few blocks down. So it was like 2 or 3 blocks down from the agent's office. Ironically, Caroline's comedy club was also like in walking distance too. So I think it was like 3 or 4 blocks in the other direction away from the comedy club. I'm so nervous when I go for the audition. One, because of how big this was, what this meant or could mean. Also because of how much money it was, and then also to make it even more anxious and nervous for me. I'm sitting in the waiting room as the casting agent is critiquing the guy who just came out for another show, not this show. So like something else is going on. They're reading the guy for another show. All right. And they're just tearing him up. And I'm listening to them like right on the other side of the wall, waiting to go in and audition. I'm like, I'm a classic overthinker at times. One of the best things for me now as a comedian is I'm not gonna say I don't care, but because I definitely do care. But there's a confidence that's really faith that I'm gonna do well. That's how I approach every event. That's how I approach every night. And no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what the situation is, some of it is faith, some of it is experience, some of it is confidence. And so I'm not nervous. That's one of the best things. But that was not my testimony back then. And I would overthink things. I would over prepare. I would overstudy. Sometimes you can over prepare. You can overstudy, over rehearse for audition or showcase, whatever that is. Right. Again. So I go in and I'm a little nervous. They could tell. I go through the read. You read. You got your script. I'd had the script for a number of days. I don't know how long I'd had it. Can't remember. But it was enough for me to be prepared, but yet still nervous. So I read. They give me the first read, and the guy kind of says, she's like, hey, yeah, good. He said, relax. He could tell that I was nervous, and then I read it again. So I read it for them like 2 more times. I felt like I did okay, but just okay. It wasn't like a out of the park ball home run, right? But it was okay. And so I left there feeling good. But I could tell that it wasn't as good as I thought it was when I got back to the agent's office. Because remember, before I went to the audition, I went to his office and they had all the paperwork laid out for me. When I went back to his office, he didn't bring that paperwork back out. True story. He did not bring that paperwork back out. Did not. So, you know, that's a lot for a guy 20-something years old. Like I can say that when people talk about the pressure of Hollywood and how people make certain decisions or get hooked on this or get hooked on that or do certain things to themselves, I understand what that is. Now, of course, I wasn't suicidal, nor was I on any type of drug. Never have used any drug. But I could see and understand that pressure that comes along with that lifestyle. So they wound up casting Dougie Doug, who from Cool Running and other movies that came after the show and before the show. So and interestingly enough, I saw Dougie Doug a few weeks ago on Comedy Hype News. And so he was talking about how he left the industry to pretty much go and raise his family and just really just kind of take a back and take some different lifestyle choices and make some different lifestyle choices for himself because he didn't like the way comedy was going. So when he said that, I know a lot of people, based on the comments and some of the stuff that was said, and then just knowing how the internet is, they were like, he just saying that, or he kind of posturing, or maybe he's flexing, or he's saying that, but like, is that really the reason why? Because he was straight. He stressed that he didn't need the money. That was one of the reasons why he fell back. And I was like, oh no, he telling the truth. That $250,000 per week, 26 episodes per year, guaranteed 2 seasons. That adds up to $13 million. He was on the show with Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby, who is known to give his cast members, his young actors and young comedians great financial advice. It said Bill Cosby gave him some financial advice. Gave him some advice on what to do with that $13 million. Yeah. That dude left because he wanted to. He left because he had options. My point is that what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is this. Do what God told you to do. Be confident and rest and be rested to do what God told you to do. Somebody mentioned a particular industry name to me a few days ago. And they were talking about, I don't want to kind of get into, because I don't want to give it away. It was a personal conversation. But I was like, yeah, man, when I tell you I'm not stressed, worried, or regretful of anything that did or did not happen, not what God has for me is for me. My time is my time. God's way is the only way I want it. I don't want it no other way. And I recognize too, had I got that opportunity during that time, number one, I probably could have wound up on some negative situation or on some drug or whatever. I can guarantee you this. I know for sure it would have wrecked my marriage. My marriage was already in trouble. We were already young. That's a lot of money and a lot of pressure on a bad foundation, on a weak foundation already. So it's no telling what would have happened to my marriage. And there's no $13 million or any other money that I would take over my wife and over my children and over my relationship that I have with them and over the proximity that I have to them. Yeah, there's nothing that's worth that. The other moral of the story is that never tell young talent that they about to make $13 million before they go into an audition. Tell them that after. Tell them that, be laid back about it. Be like, it might work out. Could be okay. Could be a good thing. We'll see. Say we'll see.